find it kind of just uncomfortable when that happens, and I would much rather go B-roll or see that person doing something in the world, and then hear them. I mean, that's.
Robert, how do you feel about that?
You know, I'm still evolving on that, one way or the other, because I mean, I would traditionally be against it, but it's certainly becoming more the trend, and sometimes it's very appropriate stylistically, and in those cases it's fine. You know, I just did a sequence that's somewhat like that, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to go away from the guy. I mean, I didn't want to listen through all the ums and digressions either.
Right.
And it's not my preference. It's definitely not my preference. But there are times I think where it can pull you out even more to go away. I try to cheat in at least enough of a different size or something, blow it up a little bit, or do something so you make the cut more honest in some sense. But sometimes it's what you got to do, I think.
Did you see, or did anyone see the Bob Woodruff, the ABC anchor? They did a documentary when he came back after being injured in Iraq. But they used that technique in that documentary, and it was very, very effective. It was one of the best sequences of television I think I saw all that year. But I think the point of that is there was a very talented group of people making those cuts. They weren't doing it because they were lazy. They were doing it because they really knew what they were doing. So if you're just doing it to do it, that's probably the wrong reason. If you don't know why you're doing it, like I said, like you were doing it for a reason, not to go away from the guy.
So you think that by cutting just at the right time, there's a way to make this work? That, you know, there's a way to find a point in there that's not as bad?
Yeah, and I think commonly when it's done, the pace of the person's speech is quite quick. It works with the cuts because there's something aggressive or urgent about it.
Kevin?
We had a couple situations in our movie Polycultures where we were dealing with this kind of thing. And one of our things, we ended up organizing the movie into 7 different sections of plots, as we call them. And we had kind of an aesthetic choice that we wanted the first and the last speaker of each plot, if we had any say in the matter at all, to not be covered by B-roll, so you just hear them speaking. But we found for 2 of those intros that we really, in order to have something that was working on a content level, we needed to do some of those cuts at different points in the interview. And we initially did jump cuts, so we had like a series of like 4 jump cuts. But the more we watched it, as we watched it that 79th and 80th and 81st time, we got really irritated by it. And eventually we did kind of like a picture-in-picture sort of thing. So you start on the full person, and then it kind of zooms up into the corner, and it's taking up a quarter of your screen. And then the next one comes on as the first one actually plays out and fades into black and white. So then you have another one, and then that fades into black and white as it finishes, and go to the next one, that kind of thing. So we kind of came up with a different aesthetic approach to it. And I think in part it was kind of like we don't want to be perceived as lazy, you know, as not taking the time to do this, but we also want to stick with our aesthetic. So we found kind of a workaround for that.
Did you have something?
Well, you know, when you shoot your own stuff or you're shooting an interview, I mean, you can, you know, as an editor, you know, I think we realize when we shoot things that can kind of get us out of these situations. So I do like to really play with the composition during the whole interview, and then you do get to make those kind of cuts sometimes when you have to, and it's a much different looking composition. So I think that, you know, just sitting the camera there and letting it sit the whole time is probably a bad idea if you think you're going to be in that situation where you don't have enough B-roll. And then stylistically, it doesn't look like you're you know, kind of limping out. It looks it looks kind of cool. So.
Back in the old days when I first started doing this, we used to get the hand shot. I don't know if this is still done anymore because it's so cheesy, but the hand shot. You get the shot of the person's hands, do whatever it's doing. They're tapping their finger. And you know that if you need to do this kind of thing, you go to the hand shot. Now, I think there's probably much more clever ways to do the hand shot. But that is a traditional, that's sort of like what...
Well, and the person's name on the screen. I mean, we've all done it. You know, it's just kind of like, it's a good way to introduce somebody. It also covers up an edit every time.
Use text to cover an edit. That's not a bad idea. Actually, that which brings, there's a question in the back.
Oh, no.
No, I was going to say, I'm interested, and, but I should be, but I'm interested in how much you guys are using, like we're all now editing on Avid or Final Cut Pro or some such system, In those systems are an entire host of visual effects. You could do a million things. You could resize, you could fly things around, you could change the colors. How much are you guys interested in using this? Anyone want to fight on that one?
I have to use it a lot, unfortunately, because I do, when we do short form, 30-second spots and that kind of thing, but I think if you don't see it in a movie very often because it's just kind of distracting, you don't want anything that's just gonna take away from that flow, but in commercial work, it's gotta be there, or they think they're not getting their money's worth, And I do enjoy it to an extent,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree it can be distracting. One thing that these programs do amazingly now that we use a lot is the simple color correction that you can do in like Final Cut Pro in program. I mean, it's amazing. It saves you so much. You don't have to, if you can do it right, and even if you just want to tweak a few moments, it's really powerful. The tools that can be done in terms of color correction, and that can make it less distracting. That can make it seem more in terms of continuity, like the rest of the picture.
Robert, how about you? How do you feel about using all the bells and whistles?
I think when I was first learning to Final Cut Pro or whatever, I would go through all of them, and creating favorites of things that I'd like to use. And ultimately, there weren't that many. So I tried them all, and particularly on this project where I was doing the anti-reality TV,
Right.
it was kind of like I was avoiding it. I think I comped a few things, but it was very straightforward and very simple.
Okay.